And now to further discuss impeachment, let's bring in Jose Gabilondo. He's a law professor at Florida International University. Thanks so much for joining us, Professor.
My pleasure. It's nice to be with you.
Now, during the House impeachment inquiry, President Trump blocked John Bolton from testifying, asserting, quote, absolute immunity. The House didn't sue to force him to testify, so it's uncertain how courts would actually vote on that question. What do you expect to see?
Well, in many ways, that's a more important question than the outcome of the trial, because nobody really expects the Senate to remove Donald Trump. But what is in play is whether the Republican Party and the Senate will respect constitutional principles and have a more balanced trial, one that actually brings together the relevant evidence. So the question of Bolton that may actually be the most important thing happening. I mean, I think it's important for people to realize this is called a trial, but it's not really a trial. There are no rules of evidence. There's no confrontation of witnesses in the way that you have in a regular trial. This is a constitutional process and a political process, but it isn't really a legal process.
Now that Trump has publicly tweeted about his conversations with John Bolton, can he still argue executive privilege? For example, he tweeted on Monday, quote, I never told John Bolton that the aid to Ukraine was tied to investigations into Democrats, including the Bidens. In fact, he never complained about this at the time of his very public termination, end quote. And you can see it there on your screen. Now, could tweets like this blow away the executive privilege argument?
Well, in a legal sense, they could, but there's very little litigation about this. Impeachment doesn't come up that often, so the legal guidance isn't clear. As a political matter, he will certainly make that claim. But one of the strongest hurdles he has is that executive privilege applies only with respect to communications in furtherance of a president's duties. And if these communications happened as they're alleged to have happened, there's a strong argument that he wasn't performing his presidential duties. He was setting up his campaign for re-election. So there are lots of legal obstacles to his claiming privilege, but that won't keep him from claiming it. And also the way his defense team is making the argument, they're doing what all lawyers do. They argue in the alternative. They're saying, first of all, that he didn't make this quid pro quo, but that even if he did, it's not illegal. So he'll certainly make the claim, but and again, it will be determined on political terms, not really on legal ones.
Is there anything preventing Bolton from giving a perhaps media interview, and would he then face any consequences?
That's a very good question, and I think it's really up to whatever John Bolton wants to do, because he can take a principled position that he's not covered by executive privilege because the president has already alluded to the substance of the conversation. He's not really adding anything new to the conversation. Both sides of the issue have been presented. He's just corroborating one of the two sides. So I think he really could give an interview on his own. He probably won't because of his sense of self-restraint. And if he did, I don't think he'd face any kind of liability or contempt. I mean, the president has already denigrated him and spoken very badly of him. So it's not like he's worried about angering the president.
If we were to see that happen, in other words, if he were to give an interview, could that material be entered into the Senate trial as evidence?
Well, I mean, I think that will depend on the rules of the impeachment trial itself. And as we've seen, they're very fluid. They're really a function of whatever the senators want. And so far, they have, they've held off deciding whether they're going to include other kinds of evidence. I hope that they do, but whether it comes in is really going to be a political question. I think once he gives the interview, it would be hard to keep it out. But again, I think it's not going to change anyone's mind in terms of the final outcome. Nobody expects Donald Trump to be to be removed. But it would be significant if the witnesses that the Democrats want to bring, it would be significant if they're included, because it would suggest that even though the Republican Party is behind Trump all the way, they do recognize some constitutional limits on their partisanship.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what plays out during the next couple of days. Thanks so much, Jose Gabilondo, law professor at Florida International University. Have a great day.
You too.